As part of the yesterday's session, we studied a brief overview on what is a variable and what is a data type. And we noticed that it's mandatory for every variable to define a data type. It's mandatory for us to define a data type for each and every variable that we are creating in Java. Okay, so then the next point here that we need to consider is whenever you have a define, it's a mandatory. So where are we going to define this information, right? We should know where exactly we are going to define these variables and as well as the data types. In Java, each and every stuff will be defined within a Java class itself. So to define these variables also, we need to create a Java class in which we need to define these variables and methods. Okay, this is a mandatory for us to define these variables and as well as the methods. Fine. If that's the case, how you need to create a class? And before creating a class, we should know what is a Java class or what is a class in Java, right? What exactly a class in Java? What are we going to define inside a class and how are we going to use this class? In a simple note, we can say that collection of methods, main methods, and variables. The combination of all these things, we can treat it as a class. Within a Java class, you can define a variable. Within a Java class, you can define a main method. Within a Java class, you can define methods also. Methods, main methods, and variables are the things that you can define within the Java class. Okay, so class is a collection of all this information, or we can also call it as a blueprint where individual object got created. Okay, from where the individual object got created basically. Okay, fine. Then the next point that we need to consider is a small example that explains more about the class. So what exactly this example means? Assume that we are studying in a college. Okay, within the college, there are multiple branches are there. So assume that the branches might be EC, Trini. These many branches are there within a college. The only thing here is if you consider the exam application form, it will be common exam application form. It will be common for all the people who are studying in the college. Okay. If you are studying on a EC, if you are studying on a EEE, if you are studying on a mechanical, whichever the branch might be, the exam application form is common for everything. Okay, so this, the common or this one, we call it as a blueprint, which we call it as a class. Okay, this whole information, we treat it as a class basically. Okay, this whole information, we are considering it as a class. And after the class, the next thing that we need to consider here is about, this is a blueprint. It means everyone in a college should use this form itself. They can't use a different form. They have to use this form. For suppose if Ramesh should fill the form as only info about Ramesh, which we call it as an object. So here as of now, the object is an instance to the class. Okay. This object, if you clearly observe, it contains the information only to Ramesh itself. It's not containing information, any other stuff. That we treat it as an object. Okay, that we are treating it as an object. Fine, done the deal. And then the next point that we need to consider here is, okay, this is a class and an object. If you consider another small example that is related to an object, so here, assume that you want to construct a house. Okay, assume that you want to construct a house. The plan, whatever we are preparing, plan, whatever we are preparing on the paper, we call it as a blueprint. The plan, whichever we are preparing on a paper, we call it as a blueprint or a class. Okay, then the next one is what a real house got a construct. A real house, we call it a, okay, we call it as an, okay, so we call this one as an object. So the point out over here is, in the real world, whenever you are working on Java, it's mandatory for you to define everything within a class itself, and depending on a project need, you will be creating the objects and you will be accessing the information present in one class into another class. So the point here is, if I define one info in one class, an object, you need to create an object, and using that particular object itself, we can access that complete information. Okay, and very good. So let me launch my Eclipse editor. Okay, I have a launch in my Eclipse editor, and on this particular Eclipse editor, what I'm doing right now means I'm creating a new Java project for us. Okay, so here let us create a Java project in which let us define all the classes and information we want to use. Let's go back to the editor. I'm clicking on a file, go to new, and here you can find a Java project. File, new Java project. If you are unable to find this Java project option here, then you need to go to others, and on this particular others, if you see, basically a Java project option would be populated. A Java project option would be populated. Choose this Java project. Okay, so choose this Java project, and once this Java project got created, I need to choose a name to that particular project. The name that I need to give for this project is batch, okay, batch 131 Java. This is the Java project name that I'm giving, and I'm clicking on this finish button. This finish button will create a Java project. See here, whenever I have created a Java project at this place, I can find this Java project information. For you, whenever you are joining or whenever you are creating a new Java project, you didn't find all these information out over there. Okay, you didn't find a complete information about the Java project. So if you are creating a new thing, you don't find these set of left panel information. For me, as I have created a multiple Java projects, hence I can see this is a complete set of information in the left-hand panel. For you guys, you will find only one Java project that you have created, which is batch 131 Java. If I expand this batch 131 Java, you can find src and a JRE system library. SRC is the folder where in which we need to write down your source code. SRC is the folder. SRC is the folder where we will write our source code. SRC is the folder where exactly we will write down our source code. And JRE system library. So Eclipse is an editor which supports multiple programming languages. If you know Java, you can write down the Java code. If you know Python, you can write down the Python code, Ruby, C Sharp, whichever the programming language might be you are comfortable with. You can write down your Selenium code using that particular programming language. Okay, we can write down the code in that particular programming language. So the point out over here is, okay, in this particular Eclipse editor, as of now, we have created a Java project. That's the reason whatever the Java installation location in your machine is there, it pulled the complete Java installation location. See here, JRE system library, and here the complete set of Java related jar files, we can find it here. And that too, if you observe the jar files, it pulled it from C programming files, Java itself. So the ultimate point here is whenever you have created a new Java project, automatically it will get all the jar files and automatically it will place all the jar files within a Java project itself. Perfect. Now, as said that in order to write anything in Java, you need to define within a class itself. Of course, the class will be having a default syntax. We just need to understand the syntax and we just need to use that syntax. So here, public void class, open brace and end the brace. Class content should fall here. Whatever the class content is there, the class content should fall here, guys. That's it. Public void class, and whatever the class information is there, you need to place that class information within these braces inside. Okay, so public class, sorry, this is not a method, right? So the return type is not required. So public class, public space class, so that the complete class information will be populated here. Okay, so now what you need to deal with it is, as you have specified this public class, now we need to write down this class logic. So what is this public? Usually few people will, this kind of a question will rise in our mind. Slowly we will study that. So this we can consider that the day one of our Java concepts, right? So as it is J1, slowly on a day 3 or a day 4, you will get a more clarity on this, what exactly this public does. Okay, fine. So on this SRC, right click on it and new, choose a class. So here you can create a package, you can create an interface, you can create a class, a enum folder, source folder, all these things you can do. But I'm just creating a new class here. And I'm naming my class as demo1. Okay, and I'm naming that class as a demo1. And here, upon choosing that class, of course, we are getting a pop-up or a warning message here. The use of the default package is discouraged. Okay, I didn't understand about it. Let's ignore it. It's not an error that it is stopping us. It's just a warning message. So ignore that particular warning message and click on this finish. As and when you click on a finish, whatever the syntax we have created, public class space name of that particular class that you are creating, open brace and the close brace. If you place your cursor at the starting position, the ending position will be highlighted. Okay, the starting position, the ending position will be highlighted automatically. Okay, if you place your cursor at the open brace, the end brace would be highlighted, with which we can confirm that this is the limit of this particular class. This is the border for this particular class. Okay. So yesterday we have seen a variable. A variable is a memory location where we can store some value. A is equal to 5. So here, what are we doing, guys? As of now, we are storing a 5 value into a variable of a. But yesterday when we are discussing the concept, I told you that in Java, if at all you want to create any variable, it's mandatory for us to pass the data type. So I know data type represents how much memory will allocate, but I don't know more about the data type. So let us open the Java document that I have shared with you guys yesterday, and let us see more details about these data types. In Java, the data types was broadly categorized into two sections. One is a primitive data type, and the second one is a reference data type. So Java data types was broadly categorized into two sections. One is a primitive data type, and the second one is a reference data type. So what is this a primitive data type does is this primitive data type will store only one value at a time. You can store A, B, C, D, E as a one value, A as a one value, B as a one value, C as a one value, or you can store any number. You can store either true or false, only one value at a time. That data types, we call it as a primitive data types in Java. And then, so what exactly the reference data types means? Reference data types allows multiple values at a time. You can store multiple sets of values into this particular reference data type. As of now, we no need to study about the reference data types. Let us focus on this primitive data types itself. So if you see the primitive data types, the value can be stored at a time is only one value. And here, char, that is used to store a single character. Character is a data type that is used in Java. If at all, your requirement is to store one value at a time. Integer. Integer is a data type which is used to store integer values. The integer was subcategorized into integer, long integer, and a byte. Depending on a number, whatever we are adding in, this data type will be used. By default, whichever the numbers we are dealing within our program, we can define it as an int data type, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Any numbers that we are defining, we can define it in an integer itself. And later, the next data type is a float. Integer and a float deals with the numbers itself. The only thing is integer is of this type, 1, 2, 3, something like this. Whereas the float includes the decimal values. Whenever the float you need to define, the decimal values should be introduced. In a float, you have a double and as well as a float two data types, sub data types, whatever you have. And the last one is a Boolean. In order to store whether true or a false, you are using Boolean data type. On a high level, we can consider character, integer, float, and a Boolean. So let me write down here. Character example. Single character stored in a single bone. That's it. If you want to deal with, then you need to use this character data type. And a Boolean, if you want to store either a true or a false, you need to use this Boolean. And then the next one is integer, something like this, numbers. A float, something like this. Okay, good. If you can go back to your Eclipse editor, I have a defined A is equal to 5. Among the 4 data types that we have discussed right now, so which data type I need to define for this A variable, guys? Can anyone unmute yourself and tell me which data type you need to define?
Yeah,
int int
Yes.
int
So it
data
should
type.
be, yeah, it
yeah,
should be
it's
an integer. See, the character
yeah,
means the system characters that are from A to Z. And that too, if you want to define a character, that should be defined inside these are single quotes. The single quote is mandatory to use for this character. Okay, so as of now, I'm not using any characters. I'm just defining this variable. So I can use int A is equal to 5. That's it. We are storing a value of 5 into a variable A, which is of an integer type. Value of a 5 into a variable A, which is of an integer type, we are going to store here. So I have created this stuff and I just want to share it with you. So before sharing, I'll be adding down comments here. If you had 2 slashes in the starting, we call it as a single line comment. Okay, we call it as a single line commenter. What this commenter will do, will our Java program execute these comments? No, Java program will not execute the comments basically. So a Java program will be on a, okay, it will not execute the comments. So when you run the test script, Java will ignore the comments basically. Java compiler will not consider these comments at all. So the point what exactly the Java will does is whichever the things are in an uncommented mode, it will execute only those things itself. And why are we adding comments in your test script? Comments are added for readability. So it means anyone can just look into the comment and they can easily understand what exactly we are dealing with that particular logic. Okay, so what exactly I'm dealing with that logic will be defined as part of a comment here. So let me add a comment for this number so that you guys can understand. So we are storing a value of a 5 into a variable A, which is of integer. Alright guys, we are storing a value of 5 into a variable A, which is of an integer data type. Any questions for me, guys? Deepa, Gayatri. Yeah.
I have a question. So what would be the difference between a single line comment and then double line? Double line, as you mentioned, it would not execute that particular line.
So
In Java,
where is the double line? I haven't explained double line, right? If you appended 2 slashes ahead of any line, that line we call it as a single line comment. In line number 5, I have added only 2 slashes. Adding 2 slashes itself means a single liner comment, and I have added a single liner comment in this program. Got it, Anu? Right. And the next type of a comment that we have is a multi-liner comment. So to set that multi-liner comment, you need to add a slash and a star. That's it. If you set this a slash and a star, and if you hit enter, whichever the lines are there in between this slash star and slash star slash, all these lines, we call it as a multi-line commenter. Multi-line commenter. Okay, all these lines we call it as a multi-line commenter. So slash slash star and this one. So why are we adding the comments? Means comments are added for a readability purpose. Readability purpose. One can simply understand what we have defined below the comments. So, okay. So before writing any kind of a complex logics or anything, whichever the logics you are writing, you will be adding down comments to your test script so that will get a better readability for an end user. You as an end user will get a better readability whenever something is in a commented motion. Got it, everyone? Any questions on this point till now? Sunanda, Deepa, Gayatri, Satyendra, right?
No.
No questions?
It's clear so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand.
So the next point that we need to do is we have seen a simple variables that we have defined in a class. So now let us study about the methods. What exactly the methods that you have in Java and all those things, for which let us rejoin the session and discuss